The courtroom is filled with hushed murmurs. A 10-year-old girl, Sophia, stands before the judge, clutching a hand-drawn picture with trembling hands. Her mother, Anna, watches from the sidelines, her face a mixture of hope and fear. The atmosphere is tense, the air thick with anticipation. The judge, seated high on his bench, looks down at Sophia with an air of indifference. A sarcastic chuckle escapes his lips as he surveys the room, his expression dismissive. Sophia is not just any ordinary child. She is a talented artist with a heart brimming with hope. Diagnosed with leukemia at a young age, she is no stranger to the harsh realities of life. Despite her illness, she holds on to a dream that her art will not only bring joy to others, but also fund the treatment she desperately needs. She has been selling her drawings, a collection of colorful, heartfelt creations, to raise money for her chemotherapy. But today in the courtroom, things take an unexpected turn. Sophia stands before Judge Ramirez, hoping for a chance at receiving some help. She has poured her heart into her drawings, believing that kindness and understanding would prevail. However, the judge's cruel words cut through her optimism like a knife. He mocks her efforts, dismissing her situation as insignificant. The tension in the room is palpable as Anna's heart sinks and Sophia struggles to hold back tears. But something will change the course of this courtroom drama, a twist no one saw coming. Stay with us and subscribe for the inspiring continuation of Sophia's journey, a story that will remind you of the power of hope, kindness, and art in the face of adversity. Sophia had always been a quiet child, her world filled with colors and dreams that danced across the pages of her sketchbooks. She had a unique gift, one that had become both a solace and a means of survival. Her mother, Anna, always told her that her art was her superpower. But it wasn't just the art that made Sophia special. It was her unshakable belief that even in the darkest times there was hope. Sophia's leukemia diagnosis had come as a devastating blow to their small family. The doctors had explained the gravity of her condition, but Sophia refused to let it define her. While other children played outside, Sophia could be found in her room, drawing. Her pencil strokes were filled with life, even though her body felt weak from the relentless chemotherapy sessions. Anna had tried everything to get the treatment Sophia needed. They had visited countless doctors, applied for assistance programs, but nothing seemed to work. It was then that Sophia had a bold idea. She would sell her artwork. She knew her drawings, vibrant and full of emotion, could help raise the money for her treatment. So she began drawing, creating pieces that spoke of dreams, of hope, of beauty, and she sold them, piece by piece, to anyone willing to help. But today was different. Today they were in the courtroom, hoping that the judge would see the heart and soul Sophia had poured into her work. Sophia's heart raced as they made their way inside. Her mother squeezed her hand, whispering words of encouragement. Sophia hoped that today, at last, she would receive the help she so desperately needed. Anna and Sophia sat in the courtroom, both filled with nervous anticipation. Sophia held her drawings close to her chest, her knuckles white from gripping the paper too tightly. She had worked so hard on these pictures, hoping they would be enough to convince the court to help with her treatment. But as she looked up at Judge Ramirez, she could already feel the weight of his cold gaze upon her. The courtroom fell silent as the judge called the case. Sophia's voice faltered as she began explaining her situation, her words trembling as she recounted how art had become her only means of survival. She showed the judge her drawings, each one a piece of her heart. But instead of seeing the sincerity in her eyes, the judge merely raised an eyebrow, his expression blank. Sophia waited, hopeful that the judge would understand. But what came next shocked her. Judge Ramirez let out a sarcastic chuckle, his eyes narrowing as he sneered at her. "You expect me to help you with this nonsense? Art will not cure you, little girl," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Sophia's heart sank. She looked over at her mother, who had gone pale. Anna's eyes were wide with disbelief, but she didn't say a word. Sophia could feel the weight of the room's judgment, and for a moment, she wondered if her dreams and her fight for survival were all in vain. But as the judge continued to belittle her, something unexpected happened. A voice cut through the tension, a voice that would change everything. Judge Ramirez was known for his cold, unwavering demeanor. His reputation as a strict, no-nonsense figure in the courtroom had made him a feared authority. But today, his cruelty reached new heights. As Sophia's words faltered and the room held its breath, he leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the wooden desk. "Do you honestly think selling a few drawings will solve your problems?" he asked, his voice dripping with mockery. "You're wasting your time, little girl. Life isn't a fairy tale where art saves the day." Sophia's throat tightened, her small hands gripping the pictures even harder. She had hoped that by coming here, her struggle would be recognized, that her dream of receiving the support she needed would come true. But instead, the judge's harsh words shattered her hopes, one after another. Her mother, Anna, clenched her fists at her side, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had always known that life would be a battle for them, but this was beyond what she could have ever imagined. She had thought the court would offer some compassion, some understanding, but instead they were met with judgment and ridicule. Sophia fought to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. She couldn't understand why the judge was so cold. She had poured her heart into her drawings, each line a testament to her fight for life. Each piece of art she created was a small victory over the disease that threatened to take everything from her. But to him it was all a joke. The murmurs of the courtroom audience grew louder, whispers of disapproval spreading through the room. Some of them exchanged glances, others shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with the judge's harshness. But Judge Ramirez didn't seem to care. He continued to mock Sophia's plight, his eyes never softening, his voice never losing its bitter edge. "Sophia," he said, his tone condescending, "you want my help, but you're asking for something that simply doesn't exist. Money won't magically cure you. Your drawings can't save you. Now leave my courtroom." Sophia stood there, stunned. The words felt like a slap across her face. Her mother, trembling, stood up to speak, but the judge raised a hand, silencing her before she could even open her mouth. "Enough," Judge Ramirez said, his gaze sweeping over the room. "I have made my decision." Sophia's heart shattered as she heard the judge's final words. She looked down at her artwork, the drawings she had poured her soul into, and felt as though everything she had worked for was meaningless. The weight of the injustice was unbearable. Her dreams, her fight for survival, seemed so insignificant in the face of his cruelty. But just as she thought it was all over, something stirred in the air, a presence that seemed to command attention, something that would change the course of this day. Just as the weight of the judge's words seemed to crush Sophia's spirit, the courtroom door suddenly creaked open. The sound was subtle, but it was enough to break the tension that hung in the air like a thick fog. All eyes turned to the door, and the murmurs of the crowd grew louder as a tall, imposing figure entered the room. It was a man, dressed in a tailored suit that exuded confidence and sophistication. His presence was commanding. It felt as though the entire room quieted in reverence as he walked toward the front. Sophia could barely make out his features, but there was something about him, something powerful that made her hold her breath. He paused before the judge's bench and cleared his throat. Without waiting for an invitation, he spoke. His voice was calm, but it carried an unmistakable authority. "Excuse me, Your Honor," he began, his tone polite but firm. "I believe I have something important to add." The judge looked up from his papers, momentarily taken aback by the interruption. "And who are you?" he asked, his tone curt. "I'm Dr. Alexander Marks," the man replied, his gaze never wavering. "And I am here to speak on behalf of this little girl." The crowd shifted in their seats, whispers echoing through the room. Anna turned to Sophia, wide-eyed and confused. Who was this man? Why had he stepped into the courtroom at such a pivotal moment? The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "I'm sure your qualifications are impressive, but this is a court of law, not an art gallery," he said dismissively. But Dr. Marks wasn't deterred. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Sophia's drawings. He studied them for a moment, his gaze softening as he took in the vibrant colors, the delicate strokes that told a story of hope and resilience. The man's expression changed, no longer cold, but filled with genuine appreciation. "These drawings," he said, his voice growing more intense with each word, "are a reflection of something far more powerful than just art. They are the embodiment of a child's fight for life, of an unyielding spirit in the face of adversity, and they are worth more than any amount of money I've ever seen in this courtroom." Sophia blinked, confused but curious. This man, this stranger, was speaking as if her art had a value she had never realized. The words felt like a balm on the wound the judge's cruelty had left behind. The crowd fell silent, the weight of Dr. Mark's words sinking in. The judge, however, was less than pleased. "Are you suggesting," Judge Ramirez sneered, "that a few drawings should somehow change the course of a court ruling?" Dr. Marks nodded confidently. I am suggesting that these drawings, this girl's work, have the potential to do more than you can imagine. More than any ruling, any fine, or any judgment you could ever pass down. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. The idea that her art, her efforts, could inspire someone like this man, someone with so much power and influence, was beyond her understanding. Dr. Marks turned to the crowd, his voice rising with passion. I am a philanthropist, and I have seen many causes come and go. But I've never seen a cause like this, a child fighting not just against illness, but for the hope of a better future, and I believe that we can all do something to help. The room was still as the man's words settled in the minds of everyone present. Judge Ramirez looked uncomfortable, his expression hardening as the murmurs grew louder. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not in such a direct way, but Dr. Marks had ignited something, a spark of compassion that the judge had clearly overlooked. I'm here to offer support, Dr. Marks continued. I will buy all of Sophia's artwork, every piece, and I will organize a charity auction to raise the funds needed for her treatment. Sophia's eyes widened, her heart swelling with disbelief. This was it. This was the help she had been waiting for. A stranger, a philanthropist, was offering her the chance to keep fighting. Anna couldn't hold back the tears. She clutched her daughter's hand tightly, overwhelmed with gratitude. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something bigger than she had ever hoped for. As Sophia looked at Dr. Marks, she felt a flicker of hope, the kind she had been desperately searching for in the dark corners of her struggle. The room buzzed with astonishment as Dr. Marks's words echoed through the courtroom. Sophia stood frozen, her mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. Was this really happening? A renowned philanthropist was offering to buy her drawings, all of them, and he was willing to organize a charity auction for her treatment. It was more than she could have ever imagined. Anna, still holding Sophia's hand, leaned over and whispered, her voice shaky with emotion, Sophia, this is a miracle, do you understand? People are coming together to help you. Sophia's wide eyes locked onto Dr. Marks. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. She had only hoped that one of her drawings could make a small difference, but now it seemed like something far greater was unfolding before her. The judge, still sitting behind his bench, scowled. His earlier smirk had turned into a tight-lipped frown as he processed Dr. Marks's offer. He wasn't pleased. The room had shifted from the cold, indifferent atmosphere to one charged with compassion and hope, everything the judge had dismissed. I don't understand, Judge Ramirez finally said, his voice dripping with skepticism. You're suggesting we allow a charity auction to determine the outcome of this case? Dr. Marks, unfazed by the judge's tone, took a step forward. I'm not suggesting it, Your Honor. I'm offering it. This is a chance for people to come together and make a real difference in the life of this child. Sophia's art is a symbol of hope, not just for her but for anyone who believes in the power of compassion. We should allow the public to contribute. The judge hesitated, glancing around the room as murmurs of support began to rise from the crowd. Some people were nodding in agreement, while others exchanged hopeful looks. For the first time since the beginning of the trial, Sophia felt like the room was on her side. Anna looked at the judge, her voice trembling with gratitude. Please, Your Honor, this is our chance. We're not asking for a handout. We're asking for a chance to fight, to keep going. Our daughter's life depends on it. The judge shifted in his chair, his fingers tapping nervously on the wood. He had been unmoved by Sophia's plea, unmoved by the drawings she had poured her heart into, but something about the energy in the room was forcing him to reconsider. It was as if the courtroom had transformed from a place of cold rulings into a space where humanity could actually prevail. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the judge cleared his throat. He looked down at Sophia's drawings once more, his eyes softening for the first time. I'm not saying I agree with your methods, he said, his voice less harsh, but I cannot ignore the support this has garnered. If the public is willing to back this initiative, I see no reason to deny it. Sophia's heart soared. She could hardly believe the words she was hearing. The judge was not only allowing Dr. Marks' offer, but he was giving her a chance. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. I will allow this auction to take place, the judge continued, his tone more measured now. But I will oversee it personally to ensure everything is done according to the law. Sophia's eyes sparkled with tears of gratitude. This wasn't just about the auction anymore. It was about the people who had come together to support her, the ones who had seen her struggle and chosen to help. As Anna looked at Dr. Marks, she whispered, "Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us this chance. Dr. Marks nodded with a reassuring smile. You don't need to thank me, I'm just doing what's right. Your daughter's courage deserves a chance. The courtroom, once filled with tension and despair, now radiated hope. The idea of a charity auction was no longer just an abstract possibility. It was a tangible reality. And for Sophia, it meant that her fight wasn't over. She had people who believed in her, people who were willing to stand by her side and help her make it through this battle. As the session came to an end, the courtroom emptied with a sense of cautious optimism. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Sophia's artwork, her fight, and the kindness of strangers had set the stage for something greater than she had ever dreamed possible. The moment the courtroom doors closed behind them, Sophia and her mother were swept up in a wave of emotions. It was hard to process what had just happened. The charity auction was actually going to take place. They had been given a chance that Sophia had thought she would never get. As they left the courthouse, Sophia clutched her drawings tighter, her heart racing with a mix of hope and disbelief. The harsh words of the judge still echoed in her mind, but now they were overshadowed by Dr. Marks' intervention. For the first time, Sophia believed that her art might actually save her life. Anna, too, was struggling to comprehend the sudden turn of events. She looked down at her daughter, a tear slipping down her cheek. We have a chance now, Sophia. A real chance. You did it, baby. You really did it. As they made their way home, word of the courtroom drama spread like wildfire. News outlets quickly picked up the story of the young girl, her artwork, and the unexpected intervention by Dr. Marks. The public was captivated by Sophia's story. People from all walks of life, from regular citizens to influencers, shared her story, rallying behind the cause. The hashtags Sophia Draws Hope and Art for Life began trending on social media. Sophia's drawings, simple yet profound expressions of her struggle and dreams, became symbols of hope. They were no longer just pieces of paper. They were windows into the heart of a child who refused to give up. Influencers with millions of followers shared the story, urging their audiences to support the charity auction. Celebrities posted about Sophia's drawings, offering their own messages of encouragement. Artists from across the globe joined in, offering to donate their own works to the auction in solidarity with Sophia. The response was overwhelming. People from all corners of the world were reaching out to Sophia, sending her messages of support. Some were offering to buy her artwork directly, while others simply sent words of encouragement. One message from a fellow young artist in another country read, "Your drawings are beautiful. Keep fighting, Sophia. You're an inspiration." As the days passed, Sophia's inbox filled with messages from strangers, many of whom shared their own stories of battling illness or adversity. They told Sophia that her strength had inspired them to keep fighting, that her drawings had given them hope. Sophia could hardly believe it. She had become a symbol of resilience, and her art was the bridge that connected her to people she had never met. Anna, too, found solace in the outpouring of love. She couldn't help but cry as she read through the messages from people all over the world. It felt like a warm embrace from the universe, one that reminded her that they were not alone in this fight. But with the growing public interest came new challenges. The media began to cover the upcoming auction more intensively, and the pressure on Sophia and her family grew. The judge, though initially dismissive, was now under immense scrutiny. The public began to question his earlier treatment of Sophia. As the date for the auction neared, the court of public opinion weighed heavily on him. The question wasn't just whether Sophia's drawings would sell for enough to fund her treatment. It was whether the judge's refusal to help her would come back to haunt him. Despite the growing pressure, the auction proceeded as planned. Dr. Marks had worked tirelessly to organize the event, pulling in sponsors, artists, and donors to ensure it would be a success. The venue was packed, and Sophia's drawings were displayed for the first time in an art gallery setting, each piece radiating the same sense of hope and courage that had driven Sophia to create them. On the day of the auction, Anna watched as people from all over the world placed bids on her daughter's artwork. She had never seen Sophia so happy, so alive. The room buzzed with excitement as each piece sold for more than anyone could have expected. But what was truly heartwarming was the number of people who bought not just for the value of the art, but because they wanted to be part of Sophia's story, to support a young girl fighting for her life. As the final piece was auctioned off, the total amount raised surpassed anyone's wildest expectations. It wasn't just a triumph of art. It was a triumph of community, compassion, and the power of hope. But even as Sophia and her mother celebrated this incredible success, they knew that their fight wasn't over. The money had been raised, but there was still more to be done. Sophia still had a long road ahead of her, and there was no guarantee that the treatment would work. But with the outpouring of support, Sophia felt a renewed sense of determination. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for all the people who had believed in her, for all the lives she had touched with her art. As they left the auction, Sophia looked up at her mother, her eyes shining with gratitude. "We did it, Mom. We really did it." Anna smiled, her heart full of pride. "Yes, Sophia, we did." The days following the charity auction were filled with a whirlwind of emotions. Sophia's treatment was finally within reach, and the funds raised would provide her with the necessary care. But amidst the joy, the question remained. What would Judge Ramirez's reaction be to the public's overwhelming response? The judge had been noticeably quiet since his initial ruling. At first, it seemed as if he would remain indifferent to the turn of events, but the media pressure was relentless. The story of Sophia's triumph had gone viral, and the public's anger toward his cruel dismissal of her efforts grew louder with every passing day. The hashtag Justice for Sophia gained momentum, and news outlets began to highlight the judge's cold-hearted behavior. Sophia's story had become a symbol of what happens when kindness is met with cruelty, and the public was not about to let it slide. People demanded accountability. The judge's harsh treatment of a child fighting for her life was being scrutinized on a scale he had never experienced before. On one particular morning, a televised interview with Dr. Marks caught Sophia's attention. He was asked about the judge's role in the case, and he didn't hold back. "It's heartbreaking that a child had to endure such cruelty in a place that is supposed to dispense justice," Dr. Marks said, his voice calm but firm. "Judge Ramirez's actions were unjust, and it's time for him to answer for them. We as a society cannot allow this kind of behavior." Sophia's heart raced as she watched the interview. She had seen the news, and the growing backlash was impossible to ignore. The judge had become the focal point of a national conversation, and the weight of public opinion was beginning to take its toll on him. The following day, Sophia's mother received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was familiar, yet unfamiliar. It was the judge's office requesting a meeting with her and Sophia. Anna's first instinct was to decline, but then she remembered the public outcry. She realized this was her chance to see if the judge would take responsibility for his actions. They agreed to meet at the courthouse, and the day arrived with a palpable sense of tension. Sophia and her mother sat in the waiting room, anxiously wondering what would come of this unexpected encounter. Would the judge apologize for his cruelty? Would he finally acknowledge Sophia's fight, her art, and her determination? When they were called into the judge's office, they found Judge Ramirez sitting at his desk, his expression stern yet guarded. He didn't speak immediately, choosing instead to motion for them to sit. The silence that followed felt heavy, like he was wrestling with his own thoughts. "I asked to meet with you both," Judge Ramirez began after a long pause, "because I need to address my actions. The public backlash, well, it's been difficult to ignore. I've been reflecting on my behavior, and I realize now that I was wrong." Sophia glanced at her mother, unsure if she had heard correctly. The judge was admitting fault? It seemed too good to be true, but there was a sincerity in his voice that she hadn't expected. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about what happened in that courtroom," the judge continued, his eyes meeting Sophia's. "And I want to be clear. I didn't understand what was at stake for you, Sophia. I didn't see the value in your art, in your fight. I failed to see the strength that you and your mother both have. For that, I am truly sorry." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She had never expected an apology from the judge, let alone one that was this sincere. The words were like a balm, soothing the wounds left by his earlier cruelty. It wasn't just a simple apology. It was an acknowledgement of her strength, of her worth, of her fight. "But I also want to tell you something," the judge said, leaning forward. "I've come to realize that sometimes we need to change, to open our hearts, especially when it comes to children like you. So I have a proposal." Sophia's eyes widened and her mother leaned in, eager to hear what he would say next. "I want to help create a fund for children with serious illnesses, one that will provide financial assistance for their treatment," Judge Ramirez continued. "I know that this won't undo the hurt I caused, but I want to do something positive, something that helps children like you." "It's the least I can do." Sophia felt tears welling up in her eyes. The judge, the man who had mocked her, was now offering to be a part of something that would help other children who were fighting for their lives. It was an unexpected turn, one that Sophia had never anticipated, but it was also a sign that people could change, even the ones who seemed the hardest, the coldest. Anna squeezed Sophia's hand, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you for taking responsibility and for wanting to make things right." The judge nodded, his expression softening. "It's the least I can do." As they left the courthouse, Sophia couldn't help but feel a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. The judge's apology didn't erase the pain he had caused, but it was a step toward healing, for both Sophia and for the justice system. The courtroom that had once been a place of cruelty had now become a place of redemption, where forgiveness and change could flourish. And Sophia's journey against all odds was far from over. The day of the charity gala arrived with the kind of excitement that could only be described as magical. The event, organized by Dr. Marks and a dedicated team of supporters, had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What began as a courtroom battle for justice had transformed into a grand celebration of hope, compassion, and the power of art to heal. The venue was a stunning ballroom, draped in soft lighting that reflected off elegant chandeliers. Red carpet rolled out before the entrance, where guests in tuxedos and evening gowns gathered, chatting excitedly about the night ahead. The walls were lined with Sophia's artwork, her drawings, her hopes, each piece telling a story of resilience and courage. Sophia and her mother stood at the entrance, both overwhelmed by the sight. For Sophia, the night felt surreal. She had never imagined her art would be displayed in such a grand setting. Her drawings, which had once been her lifeline, were now a beacon of hope for hundreds of people. The realization that so many people believed in her was both humbling and inspiring. Anna looked at her daughter, her voice trembling with emotion. "Look at this, Sophia. This is all for you, your art, your spirit. It's inspiring so many people." Sophia smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart. She had never felt more proud of her drawings than she did in this moment. It wasn't about the money they raised or the fame her art had garnered. It was about the lives she had touched, the connections she had made. The healing power of kindness had worked its magic, and it was all because people had chosen to believe in her. The auction began, and the energy in the room reached a fever pitch. People placed bids on Sophia's artwork, each bid growing higher as the night went on. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the excitement of giving and the belief that this money would help Sophia get the treatment she so desperately needed. Business leaders, celebrities, and philanthropists had gathered to support her cause. Among them was Dr. Marks, who had tirelessly worked to make this event a reality. As each piece of Sophia's artwork was auctioned off, the room erupted in applause, and the total amount raised continued to soar. It wasn't just the price of the art that was impressive, it was the outpouring of support from everyone present. As the final piece was sold for an astounding amount, the crowd stood, clapping and cheering. Sophia's drawings had sold for far more than anyone could have imagined, and the funds raised would not only cover her treatment, but also ensure that other children in similar situations would receive the care they needed. Sophia was overwhelmed with emotion. She couldn't hold back the tears as she took the stage to give a speech. The crowd fell silent, eager to hear her words. She took a deep breath and looked out at the faces of those who had come to support her. "I don't know how to thank you all," Sophia began, her voice trembling with gratitude. "When I first started drawing, I didn't know if anyone would care. But now, I see all of you here and I realize that my art, my fight, it means something. You've all given me the chance to keep fighting. You've given me the chance to live." Sophia paused, taking a moment to collect herself as the crowd listened intently. "I'm not just fighting for myself. I'm fighting for all the children who need help, for all the people who have been kind enough to believe in me. This isn't just my victory. This is our victory." The applause that followed was thunderous. But Sophia didn't care about the recognition. She cared about the fact that, for the first time in her life, she was surrounded by people who had chosen to make a difference, and that in itself was the greatest gift she could ever receive. Anna, standing at the side, wiped away tears as she watched her daughter speak. Her heart swelled with pride. "You did it, Sophia," she whispered to herself. "You really did it." As the night wore on, the donations kept pouring in, and the total raised continued to climb. Celebrities took photos with Sophia, business leaders made generous pledges, and Dr. Marks quietly observed, pleased with the success of the evening. It had started as an effort to help a young girl, but it had turned into a movement that had inspired countless people to come together for a common cause. By the end of the evening, Sophia had more than enough money to cover her treatment, but the impact of the gala went far beyond that. It had united a community, brought awareness to a cause, and reminded everyone in the room that there was nothing more powerful than a simple act of kindness. As Sophia and Anna left the event, they were both filled with a sense of peace. Sophia knew that her battle wasn't over, but she now had a renewed sense of hope. She had faced cruelty and doubt, but in the end, kindness had prevailed. This was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, and with the love and support of so many, Sophia knew she would have the strength to face whatever came next. Weeks had passed since the charity gala, and Sophia's life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. The funds raised from the auction had ensured that her treatment was covered, and she was starting to feel the positive effects of the chemotherapy. But as her physical strength began to return, a new challenge arose. The question of Judge Ramirez's behavior still lingered in the air. The public, though pleased with the outcome of the charity auction, had not forgotten the judge's cruelty in the courtroom. People demanded accountability, and the media continued to cover the story. Sophia's fight was not just against leukemia anymore. It had become a battle for justice. There was still one thing left to address. The judge needed to answer for his actions. One morning, Sophia and her mother received another call, this time from the court. The message was clear. The judge wanted to meet them again, and this time it was for something far more significant. Sophia was nervous as they made their way to the courthouse. After everything that had happened, she wasn't sure what to expect from this meeting. She had been through so much already, and the idea of seeing Judge Ramirez again brought a mixture of emotions. He had been cruel, dismissive, and cold, but had he really changed? Was his apology genuine, or was it simply the result of public pressure? When they arrived at the courthouse, they were escorted to a small conference room. Moments later, Judge Ramirez walked in, his face somber. This time there was no smugness in his expression, only a quiet determination. "Thank you for meeting with me," Judge Ramirez began, his voice steady. "I know that I hurt you and your daughter. I know that my actions have caused damage, and for that, I am deeply sorry." Sophia looked at him, her heart conflicted. She had seen him in his worst light, but this time there was a vulnerability in his eyes that was hard to ignore. It was clear that he was wrestling with his conscience. Anna, too, remained silent, unsure of what to say. They had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, the weight of it was overwhelming. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about my role in this case," Judge Ramirez continued, "and I've come to realize that I didn't just fail you. I failed every child who needs compassion and support. I lost sight of what really matters, the people." Sophia remained still, unsure of what to say. The words seemed sincere, but could they really change the past? Could the pain of his previous actions be erased with a few words of apology? "Because of my failure, I've decided to take action," the judge said, his voice firm now. "I'm instituting a fund specifically for children in need of medical treatment. This will not just be a one-time charity event. It will be an ongoing initiative to ensure that children like Sophia and many others will receive the help they need without having to fight for it." The room fell silent as Sophia processed his words. The judge was not only apologizing, he was taking concrete steps to make things right. This wasn't just an apology. It was an attempt to create real change, to make amends for his past mistakes. Sophia felt a surge of emotion rise within her. Despite everything, this was the moment she had been waiting for. The apology mattered, yes, but the judge's actions were what truly made the difference. He wasn't just offering words, he was offering a legacy of compassion, a promise that future generations would benefit from the lessons learned in this courtroom. "I appreciate your offer," Anna said quietly, her voice thick with emotion, "and I believe you are trying to make things right. But what matters most is the change you're making, for other children who might be facing the same battle." The judge nodded solemnly, meeting their gazes. "I've failed, but I won't continue to fail. I want to ensure that this never happens again." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and forgiveness. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft but strong. This is more than I ever expected. You don't have to be perfect to make things right, you just have to try." The judge's eyes softened, and for the first time, He seemed truly at peace. "I will try. I promise." The meeting ended on a note of understanding, a recognition that healing had taken place, not just for Sophia but for the judge as well. What had once been a courtroom of cruelty had now become a space for growth, for redemption, and for a renewed commitment to compassion. As Sophia and Anna left the courthouse, they both felt a sense of peace. The journey had been long, filled with struggles and heartache, but it had also been filled with moments of grace. Sophia had faced the worst that life had to offer, but she had come through it stronger, wiser, and surrounded by people who truly cared. Sophia's battle wasn't over, but it had transformed into something bigger, something that would inspire change, not just for her but for countless others who would follow in her footsteps. And in the end, that was the real miracle. The courtroom had become a place of hope, and Sophia had not only won her fight for treatment, she had won the hearts of those around her, changing lives in ways she could never have imagined. Sophia's treatment was progressing, and the public's support had made all the difference. Yet despite the joy of her recovery, the lingering question remained: would Judge Ramirez take full responsibility for his actions? The media had relentlessly covered his cruel treatment of Sophia, and now the judge had to answer for it. The press conference was held to address the matter. The courtroom, once a place of mockery, was now a space for redemption. Sophia and her mother sat in the front row, both feeling a mix of apprehension and hope. When Judge Ramirez stepped onto the stage, he looked different, no longer the arrogant figure who had belittled Sophia, but a man confronting his mistakes. "I was wrong," he began, his voice steady yet vulnerable. "I failed to see the strength and beauty in Sophia's fight. I mocked what should have been celebrated, and for that I am deeply sorry." The room was silent. Sophia's heart raced as the judge continued. "True justice is not about laws, it's about compassion. I understand now that I failed to show that." His words held sincerity, and for the first time Sophia believed he truly understood the impact of his actions. Then came the surprising part. Judge Ramirez announced the creation of a permanent fund for children needing medical treatment, ensuring that no child would be denied help due to a lack of resources. "This is my way of making things right," he said. Sophia's mother whispered, "Thank you," overcome with emotion. Sophia, her heart full of gratitude, looked at the judge. His apology and actions showed that people could change, that redemption was possible. Sophia's journey from the courtroom to recovery had been extraordinary. The funds raised from the auction, coupled with the charity fund established by Judge Ramirez, gave her a fighting chance, one she was seizing. Her art, once a means of survival, had now become a symbol of resilience and hope. Receiving a scholarship to study art further cemented her belief that she was destined for something bigger. What began as a battle for her life had turned into a mission to inspire and heal others. Reflecting on her story, Sophia realized that true art wasn't just about creating beautiful things, it was about touching lives. Her fight wasn't just for herself, but for every child who faced adversity. Her journey had shown that kindness, forgiveness, and a shared belief in humanity could change the world. If her story has inspired you, share it with others, and remember that hope and compassion can make all the difference.